Om Swastiastu. Welcome to Usada Bali. We offer our cultural, medicinal, and artistic content from Ubud, Bali. Your generosity will help support our artists, practitioners, and staff, and it is gratefully appreciated.
Om Swastiastu, Om Hawignamastu Namusidam, Om Siddhyastu Tat Astu Swaha. Good afternoon, everybody. Or you may be in a different place. In Ubud, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's a great honor and privilege for me to be back here at Usada to talk about the second installment of our discussion on the philosophy and the practice of Hita Karana, which is the philosophy of the three causes of harmony and joy. And today we're going to talk about the second principle. So last week we talked about the first, which is humans' interaction, humans' relationship with nature. Today we're going to talk about probably what I consider to be the most complex one, which is humans' relationship to other humans. So our human family, if you like, and how this works. Next week we'll be checking in and talking about the third aspect, which is our relationship with the divine, or humans' relationship with the divine. So we're right in the middle. We have nature shown in Mother Earth, if you like, sort of below us. And in the middle, the second principle is human to human, which is we stand as the integration point between the heaven and the earth. And this is where we talk about how we relate to each other. And you'll probably agree with me that most of our problems are arising now because of humans' relationship with each other. And this is why I say this is probably the most complex subject of the three Hita Karana principles. When we're talking about this in Bali, we use the word pawongan. So for nature, we use the word palamahan. And pawongan comes from the root word, which is wong, which means actually person. Yeah. So the affairs of the person, the personal affairs, the human affairs, also as we call it. We also have another word called yajna, which is a service, a reverence, and in the human-to-human realm, we call this manusa yajna. And manusa yajna deals with the humans, the person's, if you like, initiatory stages and developmental stages through their life. So it deals with things like ceremonies when a child is born, and there's several ceremonies that happen at 12 days, at 42 days, at 3 months, at 7 months, and then at 21 months, which is called the third oton, which is where the child is considered to be more fully embodied in this planet. So before that 3 times 7 month cycle, the 21 month cycle is over, the child is still almost, you could say, in between worlds, yeah, in a dream state, a little bit like the Australian Aborigines called the dream time. We also go through that when we incarnate on the planet. And so we have these very important initiatory ceremonies that happen, both for the child and for the family around the child and the community. And then the next is the coming of age ceremonies, and that culminates in what we call the tooth filing. So that is really the initiation. So many indigenous cultures, I think all indigenous cultures, have an initiation. Yeah. They're many and varied all around the world, depending on which tribe and which culture. And in Bali, I think we have quite a unique one, which is the tooth filing. I've had it done myself. My teeth are flat, and they are literally filed. So your incisor teeth are filed and brought to the same level as the other teeth. on your top incisors. And this is symbolic. It means that we are embracing our characteristic as a being of God, a divine being. Yeah. So we have a philosophy here that my father often talks about, and that is that every human, we have a unique possibility in this life. We have the unique possibility to become a demon or to become a god. Yeah. We have all of these archetypes, yeah, within us. And the demon side is more, I guess, related to, if maybe in the Bible you call it the 7 deadly sins, yeah? Perhaps all of these different needs that work below the belly button, yeah? The lower chakras. Nothing, it's not a criticism of lower or higher, it's not a hierarchical thing. Everything's necessary. But the demonic characteristics may be something more like greed, lust, envy, aggression, these kinds of characteristics. And then we have the godlike characteristics, which are operating more in the upper chakras, the upper areas of our being. And this is related to compassion, yeah, in the heart, and it's related to equanimity, it's related to wisdom, it's related to devotion, it's related to reverence, and those kinds of things. So in my philosophy, what I see is that the more we're aligned with perhaps the lower aspects of ourselves, that is what we attract in our life. Yeah. And then if we align more with the higher, more let's say, peaceful aspects of ourselves, that is more of what we experience in our life as well. So the tooth filing is symbolic of that, symbolic of embracing those higher attributes and placing those as the dominant characteristic. We always need the lower as well to ground ourselves on this earth, to gives us willpower, gives us strength, gives us the ability to defend ourselves, and so on and so forth. But what drives us is more about the higher aspects of the self. Yeah? And then obviously there is the ceremony, the initiation of marriage, and then finally there is the last stage, which is also an interesting conversation at this time, the stage of death. Yeah? And in Bali, death is considered an extremely important initiation as well. It's not considered the end. It's not considered, that's it for this round. There are many rituals and ceremonies that go in to help guide the soul, to also help with the family, and this is sort of the last stage of what we call Manusa Yajna, or we call that actually Pitra Yajna in Bali. It's a little bit between the rituals for just human life and going into the divine worship that we do. Yeah. So we have also this threefold structure within the village organization with relation to these different aspects of Hita Karana. Last week we talked about our relationship with nature, and that would be shown in the aspect in the village organization of what we call the subak, which is the sometimes translated as the irrigation system of Bali, but it's much more than that actually. It's really the whole agricultural land allocation, what is appropriate for rice fields, what is appropriate for what we call tagalan, which is a bit like food forests, yeah, fruit trees, coconut trees, and so on and so forth. And it also is very important in the preservation of the pure water sources, the springs. And this, I think I've talked about it many times, this is really one of the most special parts of being in Bali, is the amount of amazing springs and pure water that feeds us, that feeds the land, that quenches our thirst and cleanses us on many, many levels. So the subak is in relationship to humans' connection with nature. So what we can receive and what we can cultivate from nature. Now, when we're talking about human to human, we have the Banjar. Yeah, very, very interesting system, quite unique to Bali. The Banjar system is a community governance system. And it's really, you could almost call it a grassroots movement through the whole of Bali. It's probably one of the only places on the planet that has this. And the organization of this Banjar system is consistent throughout all the areas in Bali. So one reason it was stipulated why we weren't so affected by the epidemic that's been going around, they say, is because of the organization of the Banjar systems and the sort of the self-governance, I like to say, of the people. It's the people's governance of themselves. It's a very nice feeling, actually, of sovereignty when you live in this kind of a system. Not everyone likes it, of course. There's many people who don't like to be told what to do. But in this Banjar system, when it's operating as an integrated system, what I've observed is that the skill sets of each person, each individual, and sometimes each family are recognized, and they sort of organically perform their yajna or their ngaya, which is like, we call that devotional or voluntary work that goes into maintaining the village, maintaining the temples, maintaining the subak and the environment around. And everybody goes in with their own abilities. You know, some people are naturally good at carving, some people are naturally good at cooking, some people are naturally good at climbing coconut trees, some people are good at telling other people what to do, you know, and so on and so forth. This is part of how the Banjar works. And when you come to Bali and you see how everyone is when they're working together, you'll generally hear quite a few jokes, people laughing, having quite a good time. It tends to be the combination between a social event and getting work done. And it's a lovely way to see how a community works together. So the Banjar system so far, it's been here for thousands of years, I think, hundreds at least. I'm not sure exactly when the year when that was instigated, but what it's shown and proven to this time is that it's been adaptable to many different ages, many different forms of government through the old feudal system of Bali, where we were a number of kingdoms, and we used to sort of negotiate and fight against each other for more land, a little bit like how Japan used to be as well, and other feudal societies around the world. And then we went into the colonial age, where the Dutch were in Bali and held governance over parts of Bali, but not the whole place. And then we've come in now to the age of the Republic of Indonesia. So this Banjar system has remained consistent, unchanged, and the same throughout all of those massive changes. And one thing that I take away from that is really two words. One is community. Yeah, this is an essential part of being Balinese, is being a part of a community. And the second part is acceptance and inclusion. Yeah, everybody feels included. Naturally, no systems please everybody. Some people need to break out of the system and go and find their own way. I know I did myself, and I still tend to be a little bit of a black sheep sometimes. But at the end of the day, when you come, there's always a feeling of acceptance and inclusion. And I think a lot of what's going on around the world at this time, and you know, I talk to a lot of people in my practice about various anxieties, depressions, you know, mental states and things. I find a lot of it comes back to the fact that people don't feel included anymore. You know, the concept of independence, yeah, has been so stressed, you know. Or people's goal, my goal is to be financially independent, my goal is to be socially independent, so on and so forth. And independence has many fine attributes, but at the end of the day, we are a synchronistic biosphere. We all work with each other, and I believe that we're all interdependent. There's a couple of people, I think, who can be genuinely independent and live in the forest by themselves and not disturb anyone and not need anything from anyone else. But most of us, including myself, do require the interaction, the support, yeah, and the different skills that other people have. And I think that's one of the really important attributes of this Hita Karana philosophy and of the general life in Bali. You know, one of the other things that I see that I've observed a lot here is the ability for each of these banjars to really to secure and give a sense of safety and security to everybody who lives there. And this is a really, really important part, I think. There's that inclusion, sense of security, and really, to be quite honest with you, most of my, there are very few of my patients who are Balinese who have a lot of these anxiety disorders. And I think that part of that sort of tight-knit community and family, and we have the saying here, Nyama Brayo, which means family and friends, yeah. You may not be related, but you're really interwoven. This gives a deep sense of, I think, security, and it's wonderful for the children as well to be raised in this environment. There's that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And that's literally what happens here in Bali, still to this day. Despite our modern age, despite many people having professions and things like that, generally Balinese, if they're in their older years, will come back to their we call it their kampung, yeah, their village, as they call it, even if the village is in the middle of the city, and they'll come back and find a rhythm again with the traditions that we have here. And this, to this day, I believe, from my observations, especially in Bali, this continues to actually grow in its strength. I was speaking to a man today about, you know, what's happening in the world, and he was a very worldly man, very big in the business world, and you know, he even himself, he said that really one of the, you know, with what the instability that's going on around the world, and you know, the big changes that are occurring and that are continuing to occur on an economic level as well as a health level. He said that the Banjar system, in his opinion, was one of the most perfect community governance systems that he's seen, and he hasn't been here for that long, and I thought that was a very interesting statement to make on the day that I'm going to actually talk about this. So, yeah. Now, Manusa Yajna, or the devotion of the human realm, the human dimension, as we call it. Again, it's about initiations. And what I would like to actually also talk about is the importance of initiation. And I believe that it's an aspect that we've sadly lost in many parts of the world. And it's not just a Western thing, actually. We're seeing more and more movements of this process of initiation coming back into some of the aspects of Western culture as well. But I see that it's it's a symptom of industrialization and the separation of the rhythms of us, of humans, from the rhythms of nature. And I would like to just bring that up as something to maybe consider for your children when they're in that stage, the coming of age stage, the importance of some form of an initiation. And I would encourage all parents to have a look into that and see what they feel is right. There are many different traditions around the world, and depending which culture you come from, even every culture, every society has its indigenous roots, and I think that's a really important thing to look at. Looking at this concept of a human's relationship to each other on a global scale. Now, one of the things, or what I would say is the challenges here. One of the challenges I see that occurs with this kind of a system are differences. Yeah, differences of opinion. They can be things like jealousy, things like gossip, and all of these. And now these are some of the challenges that come up for us in Bali when we're living in such close-knit communities. And one of the things I think is important to talk about is the importance of the individual's soul growth and spiritual growth within that community. I talk about Hita Karana as something that I find quite important, but everything has points that can be improved on. Yeah. And one of the things that we're working on here in Bali is helping the individual to grow their own experience within that community, within that close-knit community, which for some people can become a little bit stifling, a little bit claustrophobic, yeah? And so people need to break out. Now, going out and finding your experience in the world, I think, is an extremely important thing. But what I can say for myself is that I found it very, very rewarding to come back and be a part of this again. Now, I'd like to share a little exercise that I do with relation to that, with relation to finding or strengthening my individual self within such a close-knit community. And that applies, I think, to everyone in many, many different parts of the world. It's not just in Bali. Close-knit communities of a corporation, a company, a school, everything like that. There is a part of ourselves, a part of our, which I call it the I self, the spirit self, which can sometimes find it a little bit challenging. And this is an exercise I've given to quite a few of, a lot of my patients actually, who've talked to me about many, many benefits that they've received from it. And it's something called the I exercise, and I find it a wonderful thing to put into practice, living within this close-knit community here. And this, one of the effects that it has on us is that it strengthens what I call the I body, or the spirit. And this is also related to the ego. Now, the ego gets beaten up a lot, I think, in a lot of the spiritual circles. Get away from your ego, lose your ego. Just the word itself actually has almost a negative connotation, a negative tone to it. But it is nonetheless an integral part of our system. We have our physical body, we have our etheric body, we have our astral body, we have a mental body, which is very then closely related to our ego, our sense of self, our identity. And the purpose of this particular exercise is to strengthen that. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not about making it bigger. An inflated ego is not too much fun to be around, and often lands us in a fair bit of trouble at certain times. But a weak ego as well, or an ego that is lost, also leaves us as open to influence from other, let's say, other aspects that may want to take advantage. So having a strengthened ego, it's a bit like having a strong body. You don't want to be too big, you don't want to be too huge, although some people like that. But you want a good, fit and strong body. And each of these bodies, even though you can't see them, I like to think of them in the same way. So this exercise is very simple. Just it's not a meditation, so to speak, and it's not really something we're going to do now, but I'm just going to describe it to you. So I'd just like a little bit of attention for the next few minutes. What we're going to do is, at the end of the day, when you're ready to go to sleep, you don't have anything else to do in the day, all of your tasks are finished, and the only thing left is to go to sleep. Find a comfortable upright position. It can either be sitting in your bed or it can be sitting on a chair. And go back in your mind's eye in reverse through the day. So it's a little bit like pressing rewind on a video player. And I will do it with my eyes closed, and I go backwards in reverse. So for example, if I see myself coming to the bed from where I was last, and that was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, for example. I go back to when I was brushing my teeth, and before I was brushing my teeth, I was reading a book. Before I was reading a book, I was having a conversation with my wife, my partner, and then before that, I was washing the dishes, and then before that, I was eating my dinner, and so on and so forth, backwards all the way in reverse until you get to the time when you woke up in the morning. This is sounds pretty simple, yeah, but it is a little bit more complex. And it takes a little bit of willpower to do, and I believe that the use of that willpower is a very, very important part of that exercise in itself. There's often things we don't really want to do, but we exercise our willpower. This is also important in building our sense of self, our sovereignty, if you like, and we then go ahead and do it. Now, it's a form of, I like to call it, between contemplation and concentration. And going backwards in reverse, something happens on a soul level, on a spirit level actually, where we exercise our conscious will to reflect on everything that we've done through the day. Now this exercise, although the day has been, let's say, 12 hours, 16 hours maybe for some people, what's going to happen is actually you'll see how fast your mind works, how fast you can get through. And once you've been doing it for a few times, 20 minutes should be enough. And you'll see how incredible the mind is at defying the sort of bounds of space and time. And what happens is every time you do this exercise, you become much more proficient at it, and it doesn't become such a hard task. And my suggestion is actually to do this exercise every day for 30 days without a break. Yeah. Every day for 30 days without a break, at least. And some people say that some amazing things can happen. And I've seen it myself. So that's, you can call it the eye-body exercise. Some people call it the ego exercise. But it's not about inflating the ego. It's about creating a stronger sense of self, a stronger sense of self-awareness. And you'll find that your relationships with the people around you also benefit a lot from this exercise. Okay, let's have a little drink. So, we are again discussing the relationship of humans with humans. And for me, in Bali, we have this wonderful system. But at the end of the day, despite having a system around us, despite having this banjar system, the different tasks that each person has, the different sense of identity that each person in the community has about themselves. At the end of the day, the human's relationship with the human always starts with a relationship to ourselves. Yeah. So building that, we're often seeking acceptance in others. We are often seeking acceptance in the external. We're often seeking, and now with social media and all of these wonderful things, we can find acceptance in places we maybe never thought we could before. But everything starts with the work on the self, with the inner work. And so for me, one of the exercises that I do, as I just described there, the eye exercise is an extremely important part of that. But also embracing, let's say, the waking dream of life. Yeah, the waking. There's a wonderful book actually called The Waking Dream by a man called Ray Grass. I recommend it. And it's talking about recognizing the symbolism in almost everything that goes on around us. Yeah, where our waking state becomes as symbolic as perhaps our dream state, if that's possible. Where our relationship to people doesn't just become a surface relationship, but there is a spiritual aspect behind that. And as we build ourselves, as we build our self-awareness and work on ourselves, that process becomes more and more magical as we go on. So, to everyone everywhere, I think that's all I can say today about humans' relationship to humans. It is, again, the most complex, I think, and sometimes complicated aspect. But I think looking at how communities work together and coming back to that realization of the importance of community and the importance of feeling that acceptance and that love of life and love for those around us is the central part of that. And if there's something that we can learn from the Balinese culture, it is that sense of reverence and devotion actually that goes into every one of those stages, whether it's our relationship between nature and humans, which again, we're not perfect, but the philosophy is there, relationship between our brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity, and then our relationship with the divine. So in this time of change, I encourage everyone to build those communities, build those soul families, and support each other in this process, because I believe with what's happening on the planet, we're going to need this more than any other time in our history. So I send a prayer to all of you. Warm blessings from Bali, and for everyone in Bali and all around the world. I thank you again for being with me at this time, and I would like to end with a prayer of peace for you. Om Santi, Santi, Santi. Om.